Hi everyone, just a note before this episode begins. This is a slightly shorter episode than is usual for this show, and I just wanted to explain why. Unfortunately, I have just had a very, very busy schedule this past week, and so I was not able to dedicate as much time to this show as I would have liked. Hopefully, I am past that now, and next week's episode will be a slightly more adequate length. Either way, I believe that I have quite a bit to say in this episode. I think that this is a very heady episode compared to some of the others that I have done. So hopefully you will enjoy it regardless, but if not, stay tuned because next week we'll be discussing the Pitch Black film, Vin Diesel's Pitch Black, the first film in the Riddick series, which is a series I'm very excited to cover. Alright, that's enough from me. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoy the episode. Warning. The following episode discusses the year 2000 horror film Bruiser and contains ableist language throughout. A complete list of content warnings can be found in the episode description. Please, proceed with caution. Hello and welcome to the Most Maligned Horror Podcast, a show offering critical analysis and contextualization of the horror films of the early 2000s. I am your host, Macaulay Elijah Quinn. I am a filmmaker and film critic, and on today's episode I'll be discussing with you February 2000's Bruiser, the quintessential pre-9/11 horror film. When I first began the work of outlining this show, when I would talk about it with my family and with my friends, I would often find myself talking about the decade in two distinct parts, pre- and post-September 11th. The September 11th attacks, to me, represented a major cultural shift. Pre-September 11th, that is, the late 90s and the early aughts, popular culture was defined by the adoption of countercultural aesthetics as a means of appealing to younger audiences. And you can see this in all elements of culture. So in music, you've got obviously the rise of grunge music, you've got the growing popularity of bands like Green Day and Limp Bizkit and Blink-182. On television, you can see shows like The Simpsons and WWE's Raw and SmackDown. And of course, you then have films like Bruiser. Overall, there is a growing dissatisfaction with American life. That is to say, with life under capitalism. There is a widening gap between the wealthiest people in America and the poorest. People are working more and seeing their families less. For many, the so-called American dream was just that, a dream. One that they were just now beginning to wake up from. Even if they did not have the language to discuss these feelings, the people did, I think, understand who was to blame for their having them. The wealthy and the elite, the upper class, what those of us on the left would call the bourgeoisie. Revolt, though, would not be tolerated. Quoting the Disco Elysium bot on Twitter, capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead. What I mean by this in the context of this episode is that the media class adopted countercultural aesthetics as a means of placating audiences, a way of saying you are seen and you are heard, but only up to a point. It was the illusion of choice. You can see this, I think, most evidently in the way that bosses are presented in media from around this time. It's often said as a truism that all peoples hate their boss. I know that I do. I know that I absolutely despise my bosses. I have real issues with the ways that they treat people, the ways that they dehumanize the people that work for them, work under them. And I just have to ask, why? Why do we allow these people to rule over our lives? We would all like to think that the people who rule us, our landlords, our bosses, our politicians, etc., are in some way qualified for these positions. And so it's disheartening to hear that the opposite is often true. Numerous studies have shown that wealthy individuals are less likely to be pro-social and are more likely to moralize greed. That is to say, they are more likely to cheat and they are more likely to break laws. Furthermore, studies have shown that increased wealth has an effect on the body comparable to brain damage. I am reminded here of the clip from the BBC's Question Time showing an Englishman who just cannot comprehend of the fact that he would be taxed more as one of the country's top earners.
I'd like to call out Labour as liars. I am one of them people that he will tax more, and I am nowhere near in the top 5%. So I'm calling you a liar right now.
I'm afraid on that you're mistaken. We're not going to raise income tax for anybody apart from the top 5% of earners.
I am not in the top 5% of earners.
So we're not going to increase your income tax.
But you are, because I've read your policy. It's above £80,000. And I am nowhere near in the top 5%, let me tell you. I'm not even in the top 50%.
Hang on, let's just be clear. So you're suggesting you would raise income tax on those earning over £80,000. You're saying that would affect you because you earn over that sum?
Yes.
So you earn over £8,000?
Yes, and I'm not in the top 5%.
I think that is the top 5%, isn't it?
I'm not.
If you can't hear that, if you didn't hear that properly at the end there, that response from the audience was, yes, you are. Film is capable of great meaning, but is a commodity like any other, made to be bought and sold and consumed. Hollywood is, at best, a liberal institution. For more on this, I would recommend reading Stephen J. Ross's book Hollywood Left and Right, How Movie Stars Shaped American Politics, which gives a number of examples of leftist, liberal, and conservative politicking in Hollywood. As well, I would recommend my own video, Final Destination 6, Wrong Turn 7, which attempts to dispel the myth of Hollywood as a leftist institution, while specifically looking at the ways different political ideologies are presented in the 2020 Wrong Turn reboot film. A link to that video can be found in the episode description. Bruiser is a commodity. It has producers, read investors, who are looking to make a return on that investment. So unlike some of the true independent cinema, which we have talked about on this show and on Take 2, patreon.com/Most Maligned, Bruiser must appeal to audiences. It must make a profit. George Romero is known as a very blunt filmmaker. You do not have to dig deep to uncover the meaning of his works. Instead, he is content to scream meaning from the rooftops. It sort of goes without saying, but subtlety is not a prerequisite for good storytelling. You do not need to be a subtle storyteller in order to be a good storyteller. In fact, I would say that this clarity of purpose is one of the great strengths of George's work. It is one of the great joys of watching his films, is that they are so upfront with their messaging. When creating art of any kind, you're in a battle against ignorance, and so why not at least attempt to control for those who would be willfully ignorant? Bruiser is a very cozy sort of film. That is, it does not ask a lot of its audience. We have seen this film before. We have seen these characters before. Beginning to end, we know this story. Unlike last week's film Uzumaki, Bruiser does not demand your attention, but that's okay. Not every film can be a heavy hitter. Sometimes when you watch a film, it is enough that it is familiar. I'd like to thank Janka Glonis for the use of her track Slime Dripping Down the Walls off of the album Funtime Party Gal. A link to that album and to their Bandcamp can be found in the episode description. If you have any comments or queries regarding the show and you want to get in touch, you can do that on Twitter at Most Maligned or via email mostmaligned@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd ask that you please consider supporting the show on Patreon, patreon.com/mostmaligned, where for just $5 a month you'll receive exclusive access to Take Two, a semi-weekly show offering critical analysis and contextualization of those films which have not made it onto the main feed. If you head over there now, you'll find an episode discussing the entirety of the Japanese Ring series, with particular attention being paid to January 2000's Ringu Zero birthday. That episode is one of my favorites. It's, I think, one of the best episodes of this or that show which I have recorded so far, so I think it's definitely worth signing up, at least for a month, even just to hear that episode. If you could also please take a moment to leave a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, I would really appreciate it. Next week on the show, we'll be discussing February 2000's Pitch Black, a film that I am really excited about revisiting. I have quite a strange history with this film and with the Chronicles of Riddick franchise broadly. Until then, though, this has been the Most Maligned Horror Podcast.